I was visiting a hospital for a friend who had just had her baby a few prior, when I heard a familiar voice coming from the next room over. I was sure it was the voice of my husband. I went to the hospital room where I heard the voice. There, I beheld a truly crushing but frankly unsurprising sight. My husband was together with a woman, who herself was lying down on her back on a bed. An older woman who seemed to be her mother sat in a chair adjacent. He took the young woman's hand tenderly and said happily,
"She's such a beautiful little girl, honey. She looks just like you and me."
"Yeah, but if she looks like you, disaster's gonna be coming your way, Becco." My husband, insulted and infuriated, immediately turned his head to look at me, but as soon as he saw who was staring back at him, he froze, where he lay as though all his blood had drained from his veins. This is the story of how my marriage with my husband became something else altogether, where we had pretty much become strangers to each other long before the relationship was terminated, and how it was quickly destroyed because of him doing exactly what I thought he was doing. My name is Violet Caldecott, and I'm 29 years old, working in a local office. I met my husband, Sebastian, also known as Seb, who is 1 year older than me, at my job, and after 2 years of dating, we got married 3 years prior to the beginning of this story. A year after our marriage, I was transferred to another department, which was actually where I had been aiming to go, and we had a good understanding of each other's professional situation. So I think we supported each other well and lived a happily well-balanced life together. However, after my transfer, Seb started traveling more and working more overtime hours, and when he was home, he always felt pretty tired. All of these factors combined evidently made the time we spent together as a married couple drastically reduced, and our life changed for the worse. Considering my age, the idea of returning to work after childbirth and the number of children we were hoping to have together, I had mentioned to Seb that I wanted to start thinking about having children, but he never gave me a very satisfying answer. I can't deny that I was a little impatient. I'm sure I was downright annoying in his eyes multiple times. But the fact as I was approaching 30 years of age, coupled with the reality that more and more of my friends around me were getting pregnant and giving birth, I was feeling a pressure to shake a leg to the side of myself and start a family. The stress had gotten so bad at one point that whenever I saw a parent together with their small child on the streets, sirens would start wailing in my mind, and my desire to conceive would strike back with a vengeance. I remember I'd literally turned into a bit of a whore before poor Sebastian, saying aggressive things like, "Breed me, daddy." I'm not proud of that at all. Anyway, the most common answer my husband gave me when I went to talk to him about having children was that we ought to save a little more money first. "You keep talking about savings, but how much do we need to save in order for you to feel secure enough?"
I'd say about the average amount for a couple in their 30s. Maybe a bit more.
"I think it's about $50,000 for a couple in their 30s, but I'm pretty sure that we're well within that area, aren't we?"
Yeah, but you see, it'll cost about $5,000, if not more, to have a baby, right? We'll have to buy a certain amount of things for the child, and we also have all the medical bills for you too to worry about. And I'm just not too convinced we'll be okay after everything's finished. And even if you want to go back to work after maternity leave, there's also the issue of daycare and that kind of thing.
It's not like I haven't thought about all of that too, you know. I'm talking to you about this because I'm confident we're financially capable of taking care of everything with more than enough to spare. Besides, with both of us working, I don't think we need to worry about getting back what we spent on the baby.
But
If you keep talking like that, we'll never get anywhere. There's a time limit to me getting pregnant, and it's ticking away fast.
I know that, but I just don't have time to think about a child right now. You know I have a promotion coming my way, and come to think of it, you also have a big project coming up soon. It's not the right time is all.
I gradually grew tired of Sebastian always ending the conversation unilaterally like this. So now we were registered under the same family, but we're living under the same roof without so much as a how do you do. My boss at work sometimes teasingly told me that if I didn't have a baby soon, it would have become a late pregnancy in no time, which eventually made me start to reconsider whether this particular job was particularly right for me. Fortunately, I had enough qualifications that could land me a good new job pretty quickly, and I could start my own business if I wanted to. The only thing stopping me was that I didn't want to gain independence, because not only would the stress be tenfold for me, but also for my husband. While I did admit that we'd pretty much become married strangers, I still cared about him, since he was the man whom I fell in love with. Then one day, I received a call from a friend from high school, Ruby, who had just given birth a few days prior. She had recently married in another part of the country, so we had been communicating only by email and messages for a while, but now she had returned to her hometown to have her baby. I was worried about her health because she had just finished long hours of labor, which I'd heard can drain mothers so completely it could take weeks to recover. But Ruby herself asked me to visit at the hospital where she was staying, and I could only oblige to her invitation. I'm going to visit a friend of mine from high school who's in the hospital tomorrow. I called out to Sebastian, who had come home unusually early and was spending his time staring at his phone screen and would not budge a muscle. I didn't tell him Ruby had just gotten a baby because I didn't want him to say anything. You're going to start talking about kids again, or anything like that.
Oh, okay. Perfect timing. I had a plan to meet my own friend tomorrow too, so why don't you just go and not worry about me?
Fine, I'll do that.
And maybe we'll have a late night too, so don't worry about it. You don't have to wait up for me to get to bed.
Yeah, okay.
That's all, I guess.
Sebastian said dryly as he strode to his room, staring at his phone all the while. I guess he didn't care about me at all anymore. I guess he stopped feeling anything about him when I saw his indifferent attitude of his. The next morning, I prepared breakfast and left the house without saying anything to Sebastian. Ruby's hometown was in the same state, but it was another city about an hour away from ours by train. If my husband was going out somewhere too, I thought I would take my time and do some shopping on the way home from the hospital. When I arrived at the hospital, I passed a group of mothers coming out of the nursing room. Violet, you came! Thank you so much. Ruby greeted me with the brightest smile when she saw me. She looked like a portrait of motherhood, radiant with maternal energy, alive with new responsibility. Congratulations on your baby, Ruby. I'm sorry I'm barging in when you're still recovering from having such a hard time. It's okay, Vi. I'm the one who invited you over anyhow. More importantly, look at my son. He's right over there. Isn't he the cutest little pumpkin you've ever seen? Oh my gosh, he is! After all the excitement about how cute her son Colton looked through the nursery window, we decided to head back to Ruby's room. I heard you get thirsty after nursing, so I got a variety of caffeine-free teas, vegetable juices, stuff like that. I remember you really liked peach tea when we were students. You're just so awesome! I was just craving a peach tea right about now. Thanks a whole lot. We started talking about nothing important in particular, such as the fact that Ruby had to go back to the nursery in 3 hours. While we spent time chatting, the next hospital room suddenly became lively, pretty lively. Maybe the pregnant woman in the next room had a baby too. Upon eavesdropping a little, as I kept on talking to Ruby, it seemed her labor had started the previous night around midnight. Giving birth at such a late hour must really be a pretty hard thing to do. As we continued talking, I became more and more skeptical about a certain echoing throughout the hallway just outside. It sounded unnaturally familiar. It was a man's voice, and I couldn't help but stop paying attention to my own conversation with Ruby because the voice sounded so much like Sebastian's.
Hey, honey. Taking it easy, I hope. Is there anything you want? Some apple juice? A box of Cheerios? I remember you had a lot of cravings for those.
The words came with an earshot as a loving father would talk to his sick daughter.
And by the way, the reason why I could hear so much was because the hospital left room doors open during the day, during this time of the year, to let air flow in and out and make patients more comfortable. Damn, I envy that man's kindness in his voice. My Tanner has been so busy nowadays, and it's rare to hear him talk to me like that. Wait, hold up. What's the matter, Vi? Are you okay? I thought that voice sounds so familiar, and it is? Then maybe you'd know each other if you'd met. I kept on listening to the conversation in the room adjacent, laughing vaguely at Ruby's words.
I got here early because she said she was going out somewhere today. I'm sorry I couldn't be here for you during the birth.
It's good enough that he came now, Sebastian. Literally the same name as my own husband. I wonder if there is such a coincidence. Once I started to think that voice might actually be my husband, I couldn't help but take action to confirm the truth. I'm sorry, I just have to find out for myself. Violet? I strode out of the room, quietly approached the room adjacent and peeked inside. There I beheld a truly crushing but frankly unsurprising sight. My husband, Sebastian, was together with a woman who herself was laying down on her back on the bed. An older woman who seemed to be her mother sat in a chair adjacent. Seb took the young woman's hand tenderly and said happily,
She's such a beautiful little girl, honey. She looks just like you and me.
Even though he had his back turned to me, I could sense that my husband genuinely meant what he was saying, and it made my chest implode. Yeah, but if she looks like you, disaster is gonna be coming your way, bucko. I somehow managed to keep my voice from being so loud as to disturb the other mothers as I spoke to Seb's back. Would it really be the end for you two if she looked like even one of you bastards?
You got a problem with us being happy, mother fricker?
Sebastian turned his head to look at me aggressively until his eyes met mine. I mean, wouldn't it be a disaster for the child as well if she grew up to be an illegitimate child of a prick who willingly cheats on his wife? He slid off the bed, staring at my face as though his blood had drained from his veins. Even the woman who hadn't had the strength to move from the bed paled at the very sight of my presence.
What are you here? How the hell?
That's my damn line, Sebastian Caldecott. Why the hell are you in an obstetrics and gynecology ward when your wife isn't even pregnant? Who the hell are you to imagine my daughter and her fiancé at a time like this? May I suggest you ask them instead of I, Mrs. Raymond? What? How do you know my name? I'm sure you're asking the same question. So actually, the moment I caught a glimpse of the woman on the bed, I instantly recognized her as a junior employee whom I had supervised before I transferred in my workplace. Her name was Margot Raymond, and she is 6 years younger than I. Hello, Margot. Long time no see. Allow me to be the first from work to congratulate you on the birth of your daughter. If I had known you were in this hospital, I would have bought you some vegetable juice and jelly too. I'm only sorry I showed up empty-handed. No, Miss Violet, this is... The woman's face was so contorted as she struggled to move her still immobile body. You need not strain yourself, lass. I would feel like a worse person for you making you go through of making you move when you had the most exhausting night.
You're right. You are the freaking bad person here, Violet.
Oh, I wouldn't say that, Sebastian.
Margot's just had a baby, for crying out loud. We don't have freaking time to deal with you.
With that, he tried to push me out of the room, but I just took that as an attempt to run away from the confrontation, and I simply swatted his hand aside. Make no mistake, I don't mean to force any discussion about the future right here, right now, good sir.
What the frick?
It's not simple to talk about it, is it? I suggest we talk about it slowly once Margot gets out of the hospital. With that, I left the hospital room. Wait, hold it right there. Miss Violet, What on earth are you talking about? What is going on here?
Marco's mother, Mrs. Raymond, came after me and stopped me before I could get back inside Ruby's room. I'm sorry, Mrs. Raymond, but as I said before, this is not something easy to talk about in a place like this.
Just tell me who you are, and I promise I won't ask any more questions until we formally talk about this.
I'm your daughter's senior co-worker, her old boss, essentially, and Sebastian's registered wife. Oh, and by the way, your daughter had always known that he was married to me. I didn't know we'll not work in any discussion or in court if it goes that far. Oh no. Remember your promise, Mrs. Raymond. We will talk about it when your daughter gets out of the hospital. Margot's mother broke down crying in the hallway, and I had nothing more to say to her. I returned to Ruby's hospital room, feeling sorry for causing such a commotion when my sole purpose was to come to congratulate her on her having a baby. I'm so sorry for causing such a commotion, Ruby. You probably heard everything, but I'll explain it to you again if you want me to, but I think I'm no longer welcome in this hospital for today. I'll leave you be. I apologized for causing such a commotion not only to Ruby, but also to the other mothers and hospital staff who were within earshot of the incident before leaving the hospital. When I returned home, I called Mr. and Mrs. Caldecott and told them about what happened to Sebastian that day. They were silent for a while, but eventually said they were fine with me doing what I thought was right. I then packed up my stuff and went back to my parents' house, and the next day, I hired a lawyer and prepared to discuss the matter with Seb, Margot, Mrs. Raymond, and anyone else that they may prepare. 2 weeks later, we decided to meet at a Raymond family home to discuss the situation, as I couldn't let Margot leave the house with a newborn baby in her care now. The 3 people I had confronted at the hospital were surprised that I had brought the lawyer to the discussion.
I thought we should discuss it among ourselves first.
Yes, I thought so too. A lawyer's too big a deal from the moment I'd go, Miss Violet.
But you guys now have a baby to take care of, right? Wouldn't it be better to talk things over and decide the outcome quickly?
I suppose that's true, but still.
Legally, the child is under Margot's family name now, but the father's name is left a blank space, isn't it? I don't know if you will register yourself under Margot's name or if she will register herself under yours, but unless you two get married, the situation will remain. The child will remain illegitimate. As a parent, shouldn't you take responsibility for that as soon as possible, Sebastian?
Yes, I should.
Then let us begin. They admitted that my husband had started this relationship with Margot just after I was transferred 2 years ago. In the beginning, it was she who was interested in he, who was her educator during the first months after she was hired. Her infatuation drove her to approach him, and Sebastian, taking advantage of the fact that I was out of sight now that I had been transferred, began dating her with the intention of only playing with fire. But it didn't take long for the affair to turn serious. A year into their relationship, Margot became pregnant, and they began to think about marriage.
You're doing well at work, and you can become independent, can't you, Violet? By contrast, Margot can't make do without me. I hope you know that.
Could you maybe be more specific?
You can think and act on your own, even in a situation like this. You're strong-minded enough to hire a lawyer and go to the Raymond home in such a manner, and thus far, you've handled things well enough that your lawyer hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet. But Margot is so weak in mentality by comparison that she can't even muster up the courage to face you unless I protect her.
Margot is weak, you say? And yet she successfully seduced a married man and even went so far as to have a child with him? Do you really believe that?
But...
No but, Sebastian. Looking back, your business trips and overtime work started becoming more frequent right around the time you started cheating on me. I finally understand why you never wanted to have children with me, at least. You wanted to make divorce a little more favorable for you by creating the reason that your marriage was on the rocks. A deteriorating relationship would mean less fault on you for getting a divorce, and your insistence on saving up was more to increase your share of the post-divorce estate, wasn't it?
yeah, that's what I was going for.
Then we shouldn't have kids at all in your view, right?
But with your character, Miss Violet, you would definitely divorce him out of pity for our daughter, right? My mind was made up from the moment I saw him in the hospital room that day. Since there is no child between us, I had zero objection to divorcing him. Considering the situation of their child, whose only sin was to be born to such stupid parents, I thought that the human thing of doing what I could to stabilize its life as well as its family register as soon as possible was the right thing to do. As much as it pains me to say, considering the facts, I agree with Margot. Your daughter is innocent in this matter. I sighed heavily and glared at Margot Raymond. I'm sure that's not exactly accurate as something about your personality, but it sounds like you're vulnerable in multiple ways. Margot needs you to be there for her, Sebastian. Still, it's not enough though.
What do you mean by that?
Do you really not know what it means to be a parent? Are you 100% sure you're not just taking advantage of the existence of your child? Consider this. What were you planning to do if the father of your child, who was married to another prior to your relationship with him, ran away after you gave birth? What if I insisted against getting a divorce? The latter goes for you too, Mr. Caldecott. If you really care about your child, then you ought to ask me for a divorce as soon as possible, even if it's not in your favor financially. You two really make a good match, but I can't speak for others. I agreed to the divorce on the condition that each of them sign a document stating that I would charge each of them $35,000 as alimony for their adultery, and that Sebastian and I would split the joint property equally. However, most of the property division was offset by his alimony owed by me, so it was essentially as if he was left penniless. It was not a cheap sum of money for them, who had a life ahead of him. But considering the fact that he knew a married man was committing adultery, there was no need for me to show them any leniency. Later, both were fired from their jobs. I guess their workplace couldn't keep them on, as having a couple against a company who got married after having an affair against someone in a managerial position contribute to losing some credibility. Seb and Margot, having lost their savings due to my demands for alimony, left their daughter in the care of the Raymonds, and both are, as of now, working full-time at new physical jobs. I felt sorry for Margot, that she had to go back to work at a mere 6 weeks after giving birth, but I think it's just right as compensation for what she did. In addition, I heard that my in-laws, who said they would never forgive Sebastian for remarrying after his infidelity, have severed their ties from him. My in-laws and the Raymonds came to my parents' house weeks after the meeting to apologize again. They claimed that though the guilty people who had committed adultery were both already adults, they, as the parents of these guilty people, were also responsible in their own way for raising them as such. I insisted they need not blame themselves for what their children did, but I appreciate their gesture. I wonder if the guilty really know the severity of what they did to make their parents do this before me on their behalf. At least I hope their daughter will grow up with good role models in life. After that, I decided to resign from my job. I didn't want to be swayed by strange sympathies and gossip, and as a matter of fact, I had always wanted to start my own business, so it was right time for me. With the money I was given, I had started a company with people I trust fully, and I'm happy to report the business is doing well now. I am grateful to my parents, friends, and colleagues who have supported me since my divorce, and I will continue to cherish the relationship I have with them and many people I will come to meet in my life.